friends. Welcome to the Odd Thoughts Podcast. At the Odd Thoughts Podcast, we like to talk about the everyday spooky thoughts, scare ourselves on relatable topics, and discuss whatever morbid ideas come to mind. I am Gunther, and I am your host. I won't continue that voice, I promise. Um, Welcome to episode 23. For episode 23, I wanted to start things off by talking about the history of Halloween. Just a little bit about where some of the traditions come from, kind of the changing of traditions. And then for the second topic, I wanted to move into talking about getting lost or stranded, kind of the survival mindset I might try to have, and maybe even the scaredness and the anxiety that I'd feel. Then for the third topic, I decided to dive into a few of my favorite urban legends, or creepypastas as they're kind of known as now. Some of the spookier ones, some of my favorites. And then lastly, I ended it on talking about living in a time loop, kind of like Groundhog Day. Maybe at first be kind of exciting, but then eventually lonely and maybe a bit depressing to repeat a day or a specific moment over and over. So if you want to listen to any of that, I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for stopping by. Please enjoy. How y'all doing though? I hope everybody's doing okay. I hope that y'all are living a good life. I appreciate y'all listening. It's good to see you. I just want to let everybody know, or I just wanted to give everybody just something to think about. If you had a chance to repeat a moment in life, would you? And if you did repeat that moment, would you do it any differently? I think I often get caught in the idea of that you might still be in the same mindset. So, as these things happen and we all live upon these moments of wishing that we could live it over, and whether it be because of a good moment or a bad moment, it feels that the longer that we dwell, the more nothing changes. You kind of are forced to even repeat the same things, but not you're not redoing them though. You're just constantly thinking about how this one thing happened, and it kind of predisposes things onto your future. It's not easy to accept the truth. It's not easy to accept the wrong things that have happened, whether you've been hurt or wronged, or like I said, sometimes you want to go back and relive the good moments in the time of pain and suffering. But unfortunately, and also very fortunately, we move forward. We keep going. We try to overcome the fears of the mistakes that we made and overcome the fears of the mistakes that we might continue to make. Those wrongs, those missed opportunities, even. We can't just sit there and stare at these moments. As they are stuck in time into the past, we'll be stuck in here in the future, in the present, even. So, being lost and not over knowing if you're making the right choices doesn't mean that you're truly lost. Being stuck in the past and trying to relive moments doesn't mean you're stranded and your future or your present moment is destitute. Humans suffer. Opportunity comes and existence matters. Just know that is all part of the process. And we can't sit there and repeat things. We can't sit there and change a moment. And as much as we want to relieve good moments, even, it won't happen. So we move forward, we create better opportunity, and right the mistakes that we might make in the future. Don't be stuck. Keep it moving. But I love all y'all. I'm doing okay. I'm happy that we're here on Halloween. Um, I just want to make sure that everybody stays safe today. And if you've listened to this after Halloween, I hope that you were safe. I hope you had some fun. I hope that you wore a good costume too. Maybe you and your significant other, or maybe you're free soloing it, just going by yourself doing your thing, which is okay too. I know that it's a good time to just let loose. It feels like on Halloween, there's some sort of, anonymity to people, right? So you can kind of just go out and do your thing and like I said, cut loose. And I suggest everybody have fun. Go do something that you want on Halloween for sure. Whether it be hanging out with other people, getting dressed up in a costume, eating a full fun size bag of candy, whatever that may be. I'm not stopping you. As long as you're being okay, as long as you're being safe, make sure that you avoid bad situations. Make sure that you know that there is an outlet to be safe. Don't put yourself into a place that you can't return from. It's okay to get drunk, but don't get too drunk. It's okay to eat a lot of candy, but don't eat too much candy. If you're going trick or treating with your kids or with whoever, then y'all have fun doing that too. I hope you get a lot of candy, or if you're listening to this after Halloween, I hope you got a lot of candy. I hope you got every single piece of candy that you wanted. You got the Snickers, you got the Skittles, you got the Reese's, the M&Ms, there's maybe some Sour Patch Kids or something, Jolly Ranchers. And I know y'all's costumes are going to be great. I know everybody's going to love them. You made a good decision whether it was last minute or not. I know you got a good costume. Just wear it with confidence. Make sure that y'all are, most importantly, having fun and knowing that it's Halloween. It's supposed to be a fun time of year. It's cool to let loose. But yeah, as long as y'all are being safe. Episode 23, Halloween podcast. Let's get into it. I figured that a good first topic for a Halloween episode of the podcast was to talk about the history of Halloween. So it's fun to kind of see how nowadays, we like to have these, it's kind of popular, right? So for some people, they like to get together with friends and go to parties and dress up in either extravagant costumes and like very detailed, well thought out costumes, or just whatever, something basic. And the culture of the celebratoriness and, having desserts and candy and going trick or treating with your kids and the whole thing of like searching for your costume and decorating your house. And there's so much to the culture of Halloween nowadays. And I was looking through the bunch of the history of where at least we can kind of originate some of the things that we know of that are related to Halloween. I was reading some of the history and it goes back a long time. And so I figured it was kind of a good idea to start out with maybe the history of Halloween. So I was reading and it said that it started around like 2000 years ago. At least, like I said, maybe some of the things that we relate to Halloween started around that time. And it was an Irish thing. It was a Celtic, pagan ritual. And it was a ritual, a festival, I guess, kind of called Samhain or Samhain or whatever. It's spelled Samhain, but I think it's pronounced Samhain. I think. But it was a day for the dead to return to earth and the spirits to wander. And often the Celtics, or at least the pagan culture, was that the spirits could tell like the future, or they can kind of predict good fortunes. And so they would return to earth, and these Celtic priests or druids, as they're kind of referred to, would mingle with them and could kind of dictate on what they would say, and they would make sacrifices as well, as it feels like a lot of ancient cultures did, and they would sacrifice plants and animals, and then they would like wear the skins of the animals, and they would try to mingle with the spirits basically, hoping that these spirits would maybe bring some sort of like good fortune for the winter, basically. I think because it comes towards around that winter time, but it was something that was more so a ritual. And to think about how it evolved nowadays, when it's a celebration and it's a holiday, we consider it a holiday. And it was an important time for these Celtic people, these Irish people 2,000 years ago. And you think they still had these like costumes, but made of animal skin, and the rituals and like the celebration was a bonfire. But to think that it was more serious, right? They kind of based it on this thing of, well, we need to be kind to these spirits wandering the earth, and maybe they give us some sort of good fortune, or maybe our future is definitely a better good thing, pleasurable thing. That's what I was trying to say. But then eventually, after the Romans took over in 43 AD, it says, I think, and the Romans ruled over for like 400 years, which is a long time. But they learned of the Samhain ritual, the Samhain festival, or whatever you want to call it, and they incorporated it into a couple of their traditions, a couple of their like celebrations. One of them is called Feralia, I think is what it's called. Yeah, Feralia, Feralia. And that was a Roman tradition that was to commemorate the passing of the dead, kind of the moving on. And then also they would celebrate a goddess by the name of Pomona, who was the goddess of fruits and trees. And so again, a kind of a thing to celebrate these otherworldly spirits in a way, hoping to bring in some sort of good fortune and show appreciation for life, even, right? You're kind of celebrating these supposed ghosts or whatever, these supposed spirits, and you're celebrating because you want to make sure that you let them know that it's not all for nothing. It kind of maybe feels like that. And with the honoring of Pomona, the apple bobbing tradition in Halloween today, maybe they I was reading that it's maybe related to that celebration. And for 400 years, the Romans ruled over the Celtic area. Like, I don't know Ireland specifically, but where the Celtics roamed. And to think about then it coming into that tradition, and it started to evolve a little bit. Not much, I guess, when you read that a little bit, but it's starting to blend into cultures. Which that kind of blending into cultures, I think, is what really helped like the worldwide spread of the popularity of eventually what would become like Halloween. But then you fast forward a little bit, and then Christianity kind of got a hold of similar kind of ideas around the 11th century. They had something called All Saints Day. I also saw it was referred to as All Souls Day, and it was similar to Samhain. It was similar into this bonfires and dressing up in costumes and celebrating the spirits coming back to the world, to the real world. But their costumes were more so like angels and demons and saints because of that kind of religious undertone aspect. But it was also referred to as All Hallows Day, and then the day before was then, which was, I guess, like the day the day the day that Christians celebrated All Saints Day was like a day after the Samhain day that the pagans used to celebrate. So the day before was the pagans' Samhain day, the actual Samhain, and so they called it All Hallows Eve, which then became Halloween, which is how we know it now, October 31st. But still, this is similar to how we've seen history kind of play out this so far, 1,000 years in, that it's still this ritual of the dead, kind of commemorating the dead, showing an appreciation for life. But then eventually things started to like popularize, and especially with like in Europe and stuff like that. That's where Christianity seemed most prevalent. And eventually in like the Middle Ages, you started seeing some traditions fall into like what we know in Halloween today. There was something called mumming, which is they would dress up as ghosts or whatever, and they would have like these plays and skits, and that would the plays and skits would then get them like treats basically. What it's like caroling but different, and so that became trick or treating basically. And then fast forward a little bit more, and immigration into America came a little bit more heavy into the 18th century, so the 1700s. And with that, Irish immigrants came over, and that started popularizing that kind of idea, the Samhain idea. But it wasn't very popular in the North, but very popular in the South, in the rural area, the rural areas. I guess the religiousness was a little less tight, so they kind of liked the celebrating of the dead, and they kind of used it as a more festive thing, kind of a way to bring people together in the change of the season, celebrate good fortune, and they started bringing in things like the storytelling aspect and parties and ghost stories. You know what I'm saying? That's what I meant by storytelling, and also a little bit of that mischievousness. That's when like pranks became a little bit more popular because of costumes. It was like an anonymity thing. That was kind of what was like really popular for a lot of people was, you could dress up as whatever and go to these parties and mingle and hang out and cause a little chaos or whatever. And that was really appealing to those to the South and to the people. Then eventually things did popularize into like this more into the 19th century, and then eventually into like the 20th century. It got into the North, and it became more based into pop culture, and costumes were less like ghosts and demons and stuff like that and angels, and it was like things like in society, maybe favorite characters that you read in cartoons, or it was a little early for watching cartoons, so or like doctors or firemen or policemen. That became more popular around that time. And into the 20th century is when we see a lot of the things that we do now. We started seeing people regularly going to parties and dressing up, and it became like the treats, like people doing the trick or treating thing. And that was, I was reading something that trick or treating was really kind of a big thing, or a big thing in response to a rise in crimes, I guess. I guess like it wasn't really a kid holiday at first, Halloween or whatever. But then around like the early to 1900s, going into like the mid 1900s, is when they started like, trying to target kids and make it more, kid friendly because of crime, because of people just being too much and being too rowdy on Halloween nights. And so we started seeing in the 60s when it really felt like it was the popularization of what we know now as Halloween, where people could dress up as whatever, and you go to parties and you hang out, and trick or treating became more of a thing, and obviously the mischievous pranks were there. But yeah, even with like certain traditions inside Halloween, the whole trick or treating thing came from All Souls Day. They would get like soul cakes, were just little pastries, and then eventually it came into little candies. Honestly, I always think that don't give me the little fun size candies, right? Give me the full bars. I don't want the fun. When did that start? That's what I should have read. Is when did the fun size candies really become popular? But even with like pumpkins, apparently pumpkins became popular. Like carving pumpkins became popular from the Irish. They used to carve like root vegetables. It'd be like turnips or potatoes, and the jack o' lantern tale was from like a tale, an Irish folklore of a guy named Stingy Jack or whatever. And I guess apparently this guy tricked the devil into giving him a coin, a silver coin. And he said he was going to use it for something, but ended up not using for that specific purpose. So when the devil asked for it back, the devil couldn't take it back because of Silver Cross or something like that. And so then Stingy Jack, all the way until he died, all the way up until he died, he like made fun of the devil and pranked him and all these things. But when he died, instead of passing on, he was like forced to roam the earth and he was given like a coal. It was something like that. But then they started carving turnips and potatoes because it's Irish. Yeah, of course it has to be that. But then America, it was pumpkins were very like big and popular, gourds. And so they started carving pumpkins and stuff like that. And then like a black cat thing I was reading is just a superstitious thing. It's literally always been a superstitious thing, even since like it kind of gets more so the Middle Ages when witchcraft was like popular or when it was really in the common eye or whatever. So it's always been a superstitious thing. But so much of evolution. I don't know if maybe some people are still trying to celebrate the dead on Halloween, but most of its time it's kind of seen as a fun thing. Just time to dress up and like I said, go hang out and go trick or treating with your kids and or just stay home and hand out candy and eat a bag for yourself, which is what I like. But yeah, I think a little bit on Halloween history, the history of Halloween. We're seeing so much of the evolution. I'm not much of a Halloween celebrator. I don't have a lot of friends necessarily, but I don't even have any good ideas to dress up even. So I don't even like I like to people watch though. I like going out and seeing what people are doing and obviously the trick or treating thing is it brings a tear to my eye. It makes me think of when I was a kid, especially when I go to the same neighborhoods. If I'm like looking around and I'm just like cruising, I just like I said, like to go people watch and see families and kids. But yeah, I figured that was the perfect start for the episode. We'll move on though. Staying on the spooky theme, we're in the Halloween season. This is the Halloween episode after all. I wanted to talk about something that gets me scared. Not necessarily where I think I'd be okay. I think I genuinely would be okay, but definitely something scary to think about is getting lost or being stranded. I was kind of playing around with the idea and was thinking about how long I could survive in a situation like that, even if I would get lost. I'd like to think that I'm a prepared person, but anything can happen. And imagine being stranded somewhere and being left with nothing. So I was kind of started thinking of all these things and started thinking about, well, obviously, it always starts with a misdirection type thing or an unguided situation where maybe you're walking in a forest or you're on a boat or maybe flying a plane or something like that. And you think you know where you're going and you think you know the area or whatever, but you end up going the wrong way or you just mapped it wrong. I'm not keen to how navigation works necessarily, but I think it'd probably be maybe decently hard to always get it perfect. So it might be easy to misdirect yourself or be misdirected, especially if it's like a misinterpretation of where to go and what the directions were. Or maybe you've been left behind, right? The first time I ever watched the movie Open Water, that was what happened to them. They were scuba diving, came back up and they were gone. The boat was gone. So they were left behind. And I don't want to say it's not like abandoned, which that's a whole nother thing, right? But being left behind, as in you kind of get separated from people that maybe you were with others, and then all of a sudden you go a different direction, or you're like, hey, I got to go do this real quick. And then they leave, or it throws you off in some way. I don't even want to think about being abandoned, purposely left somewhere. That's more of that strandedness, right? The misdirection and being left behind is just kind of getting lost, but If you're abandoned, then that's like a purpose, deserting, that's being stranded. I know that if I was by myself, I think I probably could maybe comprehend it a little bit more. I might be able to kind of it's easier to deal with oneself, just myself. So I try to do my best to navigate. Hopefully, I can see some markers. Like if, I'm in a forest and I recognize a river that was at like the start of the hike, then I would maybe think that, oh, I can at least follow this river. Then I might be able to follow it up and down or whatever. Getting lost at sea is a little different, that's harder. But if I was by myself, then I can think about just trying to survive as long as possible. If I was with others, then it's a little more stressful. Not that maybe people are jeopardizing you or anything like that, but I'd be kind of thinking that I'd be jeopardizing other people. All of a sudden, I'd feel like I'm like responsible for everybody, especially if it was like with my sisters or my dad or my mom or any of my loved ones. It would be stressful. I wouldn't want them to freak out, and I'd want to be that like calming factor for them. But hopefully, I've done a little research, or me and my group have done a little research, and it's not a totally unknown place. Obviously, a lot of times it probably would be. If you're getting lost, I think that probably happens a lot more often in places you've never been, because obviously, if you've never been there, then you don't know the ins and outs. And so, uh, a place unknown would feel very overwhelming, I think, more than no matter if you've done as much research as possible, right? Where like you've done all the mapping and you've written all these notes and trying to figure out all these little things, but it still may not be enough. You might still find like that one blank area that you didn't map out or didn't plan to be in. And that's scary. There's scary environmental things and scary things out in the world, and nature's out there trying to kill you. Animals and just nature, mother nature, weather. But I'm in the mindset of must survive. I'm not gonna sit there and wait. I don't want to sit there and wait for help. I just have this mentality of I just not gonna roll over and die type thing. Like I don't want to like sit there and just wait to deteriorate. I might as well just adventure and find my own destiny. And if I do end up in a worse fate than survival, then at least I tried. Fall down and break my legs or something like that, break one of my legs. I'm crawling out that forest. I'm swarmed by sharks. I'm gonna try to kick these sharks away, and I'm at least gonna try. So my mentality would be to get out of this situation, to get unlost, to get unstranded. But being found may not happen, right? You kind of think that you may not be found, but you have to make yourself found. So I'm not gonna say I just it's hard because there probably will inevitably be a point that I'm adventuring out there and I'm trying to navigate and I maybe just can't take it anymore. That's the mentality. There's only I think so much that people can take. I know that I'm only so mentally strong. I love thinking about people being pushed to their absolute limits when it comes to survival. I love reading stories about people who can do these incredible things when their backs are against the wall and when they're lost and they've been lost for days, and I think it's just amazing what we can do as humans and what our bodies will do for us and what our brains will do for us. I was reading about something that a lot of people in these kind of survival moments where they're lost and they're trying to survive, that there's something that happens, a phenomenon that happens called third man syndrome. What third man syndrome is that often these people will feel like there's another presence around them, that there's like another person in the group, not just like a third man, but just like another person in general, someone who's motivating them and constantly like pushing them and telling them they can do it, and it's kind of like motivating them even though there's no one there. And see, that's one of those things of when your back's against the wall and you're pushed to your absolute limits, what's gonna happen? I was thinking about some like specific scenarios, at least some ones that really would affect me a lot. Being lost in a forest, that would absolutely suck. I love hiking. I mean, I don't go hiking very often, but I don't go hiking at all. But I do love the idea of hiking. If I was in maybe more of an area where it was like common, then I'd do it more often. But if I was doing like a more adventurous hike and I like an expedition and I get lost, right? That's a bit scary. I can't read the map or I misdirected myself and I get a little bit off the beaten path. I'm a little bit of a person that I get so anxious and I'm an overthinker, so I like to think that that wouldn't happen, but it might. Especially like if I've done so much mapping and I just happen to end off in the part of the map that I didn't have mapped off. Or maybe in a worse scenario where like I've gotten hurt, falling off a cliff or being attacked by an animal or something like that. That was one of those really worst case scenario type situations. Or being like, you're in a plane crashes in the forest, maybe you were the pilot and you're the only person on or the only survivor. But like I was saying before, it's about getting out. It's literally about crawling out of there, trying to do my best. I'd hope that I'd have a couple of survival things with me, especially if I knew I was going deep into like a forest and I knew I was going to be kind of deep into the brush. I'd hope that I'd have things with me, like some stuff to start a fire, maybe, twine or something. You often maybe don't think about getting lost, but just in case I do get lost, I'd like to be ready. So but I'm not necessarily thinking about settling down, but obviously during the nighttime, I'm not going to be roaming when I'm definitely at my weakest. So I'm going to probably just move as much as possible. And if I find a place I can like post up and maybe collect a couple twigs along the way. And this is all the ideal scenario. Hopefully, like I can take it. But maybe like a last ditch effort that hopefully I can make like an SOS sign. I don't even really want to think about the last ditch effort. Like, what's like the last thing I would absolutely do? I'd hope that I'd get out. I'm doing everything to get out of that situation, to get out of the being lost in a forest. But then I was also thinking about like, well, maybe it's a little easier in a forest, but being lost at sea, that's another crazy thing. The vastness of the ocean is unreal. And so I think it's way easier to get lost. And maybe I'm just got a boat and I'm with people, or where I'm navigating and I'm going on like a fishing trip or something, and I get lost, or I run out of gas and I get stranded. Right? That's another thing too, getting stranded. I'm too freaked out by the ocean that I don't even know what I would be able to do. There's too many things in the water that I don't know about, and I don't know how far I can swim. And if maybe I have a general idea of how far out I am, but maybe I'm turned around and I don't know like what direction I'm in, like where's north, where's south. So I'm definitely don't think I'm abandoning that. That's one of those situations where I might sit there and wait. I s- I would hope that I have rations on the boat and just I'm an overthinker, like I said, so I probably would have things like that. Definitely like flares so that I could shoot off in the nighttime or shoot off. And I I, I don't think in the sea I would be as adventurous without a crew, right? Or without people leading me on the adventure. I don't think I could do it myself. When I'm in a forest, I think I could be a little more adventurous and do it my own. I'd be a little more confident, but at sea, that's another beast, and I don't think I can handle that. It's just that nighttime sits, and I'd just be thinking about every little thing. So I don't even know what my plan would be if I can't start the boat up and I'm stuck out there, or I was left scuba diving. I'm screwed. I guess I'll swim. I'd try. I'll have a life jacket on, and maybe I can have like a way to keep some of like my if I have flares with me, I can, or if I have a dinghy, right? Hopefully, maybe even that. Got an oar, and I can row myself to safety. But that just freaks me out. I don't think I have really a plan. And last ditch effort, I would just let the sharks take me. I would just let them go. I can't. I'm rolling over in this situation. This, see, that's the one. The sea is scary. So that's the one time I think I could not really think about survival. I'd just be so paralyzed in fear. And even furthermore on that, something that's even scarier is cave diving. And I was thinking about I'll never go cave diving. I like going in caves and exploring like the big caverns, you know what I'm saying? But you ain't gonna catch me going through caves, doc. No way. I can't even. So if I'm not gonna end up there, I can't get lost, right? So we'll move on. No, how even? I just like I said, I wouldn't even be in there. But a lot of times, I think people underestimate. Every time I watch these videos, you see them trying to squeeze in these really tight spaces, or they come up to these spots that are like full of water. So I think you probably get a little turned around, and even in an effort to try to escape, you exhaust yourself and you kind of just can't go anymore. Yeah, that would be. I'm freaking myself out thinking about that one. That one's even worse than the sea. Like I'll go out on the water and I'll go out on a boat. Like I don't have any problem with that. I don't want to go in the water, but I'll go on the boat. I'll go out and hang out, but I'm not going in the I'm not cave diving. I'm not splunking like that, dude. I watched the movie The Descent. I've seen what happens. You can get lost pretty easily. It was a little bit more on that one chick that Juno, I think is what her name was, and she's the one that kind of like wanted to explore the unexplored, and it was her fault for turning around everybody. But you know, it might happen. I just don't think I could ever do it. I might do it one time. I literally might do it one time, but it would have to be like, what's the grade A rookie, like a 12-year-old can go through this cave without getting hurt or freaking out at all. But even with any scenario it is, the aftermath of survival, it feels like there's often this thing of people are much more appreciative of life. And also maybe surprised on what you were able to do, being able to push yourself. I love thinking that, like I said, I like thinking that people can do these extreme things when pushed to extreme circumstances. People are amazing. People are absolutely crazy and cool in that way. So to see that happen and to see people make it out of these survival situations, it's awesome. Also, you got a pretty cool story to tell, I guess, talking about it. Even in the middle school, even if you were lost for a day, barely lost, someone found you within hours, but nonetheless, it's still a scary experience. As a kid, we get lost in the mall and it's scary. So to think about a bigger thing where you're trying to be adventurous and maybe you're trying something for the first time and whoops, you get lost, you get stranded on accident. Every time in a plane, I think about Lost, the movie, the show Lost, or like Lord of the Flies. Gonna get stranded with everybody and I'm on a cruise ship and we get stuck in the middle of the ocean or something like that. Those are kind of doomsday-ish scenarios, but definitely something to think about. It shouldn't stop anybody from being adventurous, though. We'll transition into the next topic. One of my favorite things to do on the internet is to explore the spookier sides of things. I love going up on like Reddit and reading scary stories and just divulging to the spookiness. And as a kid, as I've grown up, even things that have popped out, and one of my favorite things to look into is urban legends. Nowadays, they're kind of called creepypastas a little bit, but still, those are modern day urban legends. As a kid, just reading about all these spooky tales about whatever it may be, and nowadays, it still is very relevant. There's a lot of spooky stuff out there, and a lot of people got such creative minds and can come up with the spookiest things and sometimes even base things off of history. Just, you know, divert the history a little bit. So I was sorry. I was making a list of just four of like my favorite ones, or at least ones that kind of stand out to me. I wouldn't say these are like the four most popular. I mean, a couple of them are pretty popular, but these are four ones that kind of stick out to me. Threw a couple like old school urban legends in there, and I threw a couple more modern day creepypastas in. So the first one, literally the most classic one, is Bloody Mary. Very much so like the most classic urban legend out there, you know? Go into the bathroom, turn the lights off, look in the mirror, close your eyes, say Bloody Mary 3 times, I think, right? You turn it on and she's supposed to be there. As a kid, that absolutely used to frighten me. I loved spooking myself. I've always been a very spooked person. I'm jumpy and get easily scared, but I love doing it. I love scaring myself. So I was always scared to do it, but the few times obviously I did it, nothing happened. As much as I maybe really hoped that nothing would happen, maybe it would have been exciting if something did. But I was looking into a little bit of like who Mary was, and it's just changed so much. Bloody Mary has been kind of a tale through hundreds of years. And Mary is like different in all these different iterations. So it was really hard to find out like who's Mary. What's the deal with Mary? What's the movie with Cameron Diaz? What about Mary? Sorry, I messed it up. But also just even thinking about how your brain likes to play tricks on you, right? And so if you kind of feed into thinking you're gonna see something and you kind of put yourself into that spooky mindset that maybe you will see something. Very much so. There's been proof of like hallucinations, right? And people having a little bit of this dysmorphia when they look at themselves. So to say that that couldn't happen when you do this, especially if you've built it up in your head to make it a little more scary than it actually is. But I don't know what she wants. I don't know what Mary's intention is. I don't know why you gotta come popping up my mirror. Yeah, I did the game. I get it. I did it. But I bet there was someone doing it at the same time somewhere else. So why you gotta come up in my mirror, man? I just break my mirror, break every single mirror so that I can never do it again. I'll never look in a mirror ever again. I don't need to see Mary. If it was proven real, like you actually did it and she was there, man, I'm breaking the mirror. I'll fuck me up a little dead girl. Sorry for my language. I'll beat her up. I don't care. Pull her out that thing. Like in Scary Movie 3 when Brenda pulls the little ring girl out she getting water all over my floors. I love that scene. But that's a quick little one. That one's one of the earliest ones I remember. I remember my dad also telling me an urban legend, if you will, a scary story. And he used to tell me one about the Jersey Devil. And that one used to freak me out a lot. The Jersey Devil originates from Pine Barrens, South Jersey. I guess like the first accounted tellings of the story or whatever, or the origins, comes from 1735, the mid 18th century. And I've read a couple different iterations that it always comes from a story of this mother. Her last name is Leeds. Uh, Either Jane or Deborah is the first name, but Mother Leeds. Mother Leeds has 12 kids and then becomes pregnant with the 13th kid. But she doesn't want the 13th kid, so she curses the kid, and all of a sudden the kid is born, but the kid is born okay at first but then quickly turns into this winged goat demon thing and just flies off, flies out the house and gone. And over the years, there's literally been tellings of people seeing this creature. I think not just in South Jersey or just Jersey. I think it's been seen a lot of all over. I know that the tale of the Delaware demon or the Dover demon or whatever it is, that's kind of the same thing. So it makes you think about how far the Jersey Devil got. But the story always was the same with this. even the 12 kids was like I read something that it was like less than that, but the idea that this mother had a bunch of kids and didn't want another one, and so she burst the last one and turns into a winged goat demon and flies off. Pretty freaking scary to think about, and makes you think about what people were thinking back then. Sipping on that good moonshine or that good fermented alcohol. But I was also reading that some people believe that the mother was into witchcraft, so that she cursed the kid on purpose, and she was like planning on doing stuff with the other kids or something like that, and that the dad was the devil himself, mingling with the dark sources, the dark evils of the world, man. That's but my dad used to tell me that story, and I always used to think that one day I'd look out of my backyard or I'd be out at night and I'd see a little devilish thing moving around. I don't really picture it being more than like 3 feet tall, but probably will fuck you up. Sorry for my language again. It's always one of those things. What I love about creepy stories like this or urban legends about creatures or whatever is that what if you actually experience these things? I don't think I could maybe handle seeing the Jersey Devil. Like I said, maybe he doesn't make it to Texas. Texas has got we got like Goat Man and stuff like that. So, and even urban legends, being there, it's even hard to say that the Jersey Devil is like an urban legend. It is because it's a tale told for as long as it's been told, and but it's kind of also like a mythological or like creature or whatever, or not mythological, but one of those like cryptid creatures. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man, I stick with that one a lot. And there's a hockey team called the Jersey Devils. So that tale is popular and it's always been a part of that culture and will probably be told on for years and years and years. So getting into more popular, like modern day, what you would call like creepypastas more so. One of the ones that really have freaked me out, and it's been that way. I think I found out about it more in like high school was the elevator game. The elevator game is a game where you go to an elevator. Preferably, you go to an elevator that at least goes up 10 floors or more, but at least 10 floors. And the idea is that you're basically teleporting into another dimension, another world, if you will, another realm. And that's spooky. A lot of times, these big buildings, and you think that, are there actually people in there? At least I've thought that way. I was a delivery driver for a period of my time, so I delivery drove in Dallas, like Dallas. So I'd go up in these big skyscrapers and it's crazy to think that all these people here at the same time, but I did a couple hallways and a couple elevators, like back elevators and the back hallways, and that was spooky. But every time, so if you want to play the elevator game, this is how you play it. You start at the first floor and then you make sure you're always at the first floor, and then you press in this sequence four, then you press two, then you press six, then you press two again, then you press 10, and then you press five. Then once you're at five, a woman, some ghostly spirit, should come on, and it's very, very important that you don't acknowledge her. You don't look at her. You don't speak to her. You don't speak back to her. You do nothing. But once she comes on, you press one. And the elevator then will either go up or down. If it goes down and it goes to one, then you should just leave. Or you can get off the elevator and restart. I think the woman is still there with you, but again, don't acknowledge her. But then let's say you go up to 10. Then you must exit the elevator, ignoring the woman the whole time. And now you are in another world. This is this other dimension that you want to get to. Quite often you'll be alone, no electricity, no lights, no nothing. except for the glowing of a red cross. Often people see this red cross in the distance, or you're supposed to. And you're allowed to explore. You're allowed to even like see all these things, and I have questions about how much you can actually see and what there is to see and what happens if you get close to the cross. That's a spooky thing. I don't think I ever want to go to a world where it's another dimension, whatever that may be. Obviously, I'm never going to be in a situation where I'm going to be trapped in an elevator with a dead girl, so you probably won't catch me playing the elevator game. But let's say you've explored the world and you've done your thing and you want to return. You have to use the same exact unit, the same elevator, the same unit. And then you press the same sequence of buttons. You go to 4th floor, 2, 6, 2, 10, and then 5. And then you press 1 again. This time, when you press 1, the elevator will go up. And you must press all the buttons, whatever buttons you can, to try to stop the elevator from going to the 10th floor, from reaching the 10th floor. I don't know what happens when you reach the 10th floor. I think you probably just restart, but once you stop and you stop before the 10th floor, the elevator will go back down to 1. And once you reach the bottom floor, you make sure that you step off and you explore. And if everything looks normal, then you're free. And if everything is not normal, then you must repeat. And hopefully you won't have to repeat endless amount of times. That's a scary game. That wasn't around when I was a kid. At least I don't remember hearing about that. And even as an adult, I don't want to play around with that. Like I said, I've been to some spooky elevators. So the last little creepypasta urban legend I want to talk about is back rooms. This one, is more exciting to me. If you follow me on Instagram, I often will like post on my story. I'll post a lot of reels, like a lot of liminal space backrooms stuff. And the idea of the backrooms is that it's these out of bound spaces, these liminal spaces, empty, eerie, surreal kind of. Often is kind of described as kind of an in between. It feels very real and it feels like you've been there, but it's not. It kind of goes under this uncanny valley vibe. And when you read into the back rooms, I didn't have a lot of time to read into because there are tons of like levels into the back rooms. Each level meaning something different and portraying something else. But nonetheless, it's always supposed to feel like a very similar feeling, a very familiar feeling. Like you know what this place is, but you've never been here. And the idea of this transitional space, the idea of this like space in between worlds. How you get there, I have no idea. It always feels like it's like a random thing. You hear stories that people write about the back rooms, then people going into the back rooms that it's just like a walking into a portal. You're somewhere and then all of a sudden you're in these back rooms. And the only way to get through is to progress. Like you have to progress through these levels, and each level is filled with different spooky creatures or spooky spaces, eerie, like I said, very surreal feeling. And I saw it was popularized really in 2019, so very like before pandemic. One of the big people that pushed the back rooms, at least in kind of the visual way, was this guy on YouTube named Kane Pixels. He was 16 years old and created these backroom like AI generated videos depicting the back rooms on YouTube. You can go look him up, Kane Pixels. And apparently A24 is supposed to be doing a movie about the back rooms, and they've hired like Kane Pixels to work with them and stuff. And so I think that's a venture of horror that we haven't seen yet necessarily. We've seen the eerie stuff and we've seen the creepy spaces, but we've never seen the backroom stuff. It'll be kind of cool to see how many levels they go through and the liminal spaces. That stuff's spooky. I have a hard time with nostalgia. I recorded a podcast a while ago that was about nostalgia and nostalgic feelings. And I said that I quite often feel kind of hurt by them and they're kind of hard for me to feel. I feel emotional about them. And so when I watch these like rooms, the videos on the back rooms and watch videos on liminal spaces or just look at pictures of these things, it gives me these spooks. And I suggest anybody to go look that stuff up. I really, really, really do. But I know that there are tons of creepypastas and urban legends out there. I know y'all have some of y'all's favorites. It'd be fun to possibly talk about more in a future episode. But that's all I really want to say for now. So, lastly, I was thinking of another thing to put in and something pretty random, just thinking of random spooky things. And one thing I was thinking about that maybe isn't spooky necessarily at first when you think about it, but is being in a time loop. Basically, what a time loop is repeating a certain moment or a certain day over and over and over again. Just like Groundhog Day or Happy Death Day, if you ever seen that. Being in a time loop, I think, kind of seems maybe fun at first, but to me, very scary to think about having to relive a certain moment or a certain day over and over again. And to think about how confusing that is to wake up on that repeated day. Would it be like noticeable right off the bat? Would you get kind of that rush of deja vu right off the bat? Or would it be through the process of going through things and you see people and, oh, they're in the same outfit, or oh, that's the same thing that happened from yesterday. What? This is, would you then have to realize it like that? The confusion behind that. Nobody else is, you're the only one aware of it repeating a time. For nobody else, time is not repeating. Everybody's going through it for the first time, theoretically. Being caught in a time loop would be pretty spooky to think about having to then repeat either your best days or your worst days. If it was a really good day, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it was like your birthday and you just had like a good time and well, that'd be nice to repeat, I guess, right? Repeat the good days, repeat the fun times. But then what if it was like one of your most miserable days? You got fired and you kind of been depressed and it's kind of a day you're repeating. I like to think that there probably would be a reason for it. That's maybe what in my mind I have like this law of nature that there is a reason for things. That time wouldn't just repeat itself for no reason. Why would time be so forward moving and so so much of a farce, right? So much of a thing that all of a sudden now it's repeating. Also, am I aging? Am I really changing? Or is it literally just repeating that same day? Like I said, I like to think there's a reason. Maybe that there's a reason that you're supposed to be like for a good reason. Like if you're repeating a good day, that maybe you're repeating that good day because something bad's about to happen. That maybe you're just getting in that last little bit of enjoyment. The day is repeating because it wants you to feel good before this inevitable bad situation happens. Sorry, happens. But then maybe you're repeating a bad day over and over again to help teach you something, to teach you that there's a little bit more, to think that there is a lesson to be learned, that you have to figure it out and it's maybe gonna take some discovering and experimenting. But to find that out is difficult. I mean, watching like Groundhog Day, he doesn't know. He tries all these things and nothing happens. And Happy Death Day, it was the same thing. It was trying everything and nothing working. So I like to believe there's a purpose. I know that I probably would be just as confused as anybody, right? I think as anybody also, you probably would feed into it in a good way first. Maybe it would be a little freaky, but then you kind of might be a little bit excited with it. Maybe you get to kind of do whatever, get to roam around, and you get to like learn anything, learn skills, and maybe you get to carry it over when time stops repeating. You get to just try steal cars. You could be as crazy or as plain as possible, sane or insane. Yeah, like go steal a bank, and I mean you're not gonna be able to keep the money because you're just gonna wake up the next day. So why not? Why not just for the thrills? Go just wreak havoc or just like have fun. It also makes you think about all the things that you have in your head, that all those thoughts and the things that keep you down and get you emotional, and all the bad feelings maybe go away because you just kind of like, well, what's the point of feeling them? I'm going to repeat them. So I'm going to repeat this day. So I might as well not. Maybe even gets you to be a little more confident just doing things in life, you know? You'd be more willing to go do something because you know you're going to repeat the day. So if you mess up, then you get a new chance. Go talk to that person you never talked to, or go to that restaurant you never been to. Like I said, as mundane or as over the top as you can think. But eventually, I think, it probably gets it gets a little depressing. Nobody else is experiencing what you're experiencing, so at least in the way of that you're aware of it repeating. People are also repeating the day, obviously, but you're the only one that's aware of it. So how and also ending each day, do you just wait for the day to play out, right? I was thinking about in Groundhog Day, he like kills himself, right? And then he just wakes up the next day. And it's a morbid thing because he's literally trying to end his life, but would you then pop up the next day, or would death actually be like the final thing? You actually repeat like a week of days and then you're like pretty sick of it, and so you're like do something dangerous, or you kill yourself because you think it's going to end and it actually ends. It's that's kind of an interesting thing. It puts them into the loop, into maybe what eventually becomes the misery of that time loop, but then now you're dead. Now you can't live on to do anything. A question of even if you remember the things that you went through, right? You picked up on some skills, read a couple books, learn to do this, learn to do that. Even I was thinking about like, could I travel? How could I if I wouldn't have any more money or anything. Like I said, I couldn't like save up anything, but maybe I can have a way of I can get this much money if I do these certain things, and I can get to the airport at this time, and just think about just flying as far away as possible, or just getting in a different car every day, and just seeing how far I can drive. I'd be so innate with the inner workings of traveling, how the how our country is, all the highway connections and stuff. But let's say I do make it through that time loop, or we make it through that time loop, whoever is experiencing the time loop. Let's say you make it through and you're on the other side, and all of a sudden you get to experience a new day, a new moment. Would it be a new feeling of appreciation for life? Would it be a new appreciation for the people that you have? A new appreciation for time? I just think that maybe you would love a lot of the things. You would love the passing of time, and you would love things a little bit more. Being stuck and doing the same thing over and over again, whether it's a good moment or a bad moment, a good day or a bad day, it just becomes too much. It has to be. So I think it would bring another appreciation for how things actually function, how the world actually moves. It sucks that we are heading towards our death and time is only going forward, but I don't think I could sit there and want to repeat time over. It's kind of the beautiful thing about life is that it keeps going. What about instead of a time loop, you end up in like a time slip? A time slip is moving forward and backwards in time. You just like wake up in another time period. Realistically, I try to think about how far back I could go. The future, kind of exciting, maybe. Be a little, obviously, it'd all be jarring, but past would be a lot harder. When people say, like, oh, I wish I lived back then, it's like, nah, I don't think you do. I just don't think you do. I probably could go back to 15th century, maybe 16th century, the Middle Ages or something like that. That's about far back as I could go. If I woke up in the future, I think I'd be a little less spooked in the past. It'd still be very crazy, but less spooky. And to think like if I was like cryogenically frozen or time travel exists in a way that you can't access it in an awake state, but you can access it in a sleep state. That's something to think about. All right. Ending it on time loop. Let's move on to the end of the episode. Alrighty, friends. That's really all I have to say about that. If you want to listen to this episode or any of my episodes, I always put them on YouTube or Spotify under the Odd Thoughts podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it relatable, then I'd appreciate it if you subscribed. Also, you can follow me on all my social medias. I have a Facebook, I have a Instagram, and I have Twitter. All those are going to be in my description as well as the end of the episode. I appreciate any support I can get. I really do, and I'm only trying to grow this as far as possible. But thank y'all for stopping by. I love y'all. Make sure to show up for yourselves every single day and be excellent to each other.